Who's ready for some prehistoric era? Because today we're taking a look at Dinowrestlers, which are used by Go Onizuka after becoming a bounty hunter for Soul Technologies. This is actually the second archetype he used, worst one in my opinion, but yeah, he was using them for a short bit and then reverted back to his own original archetype, which we'll also cover later, which is Goukis. And yeah, this is actually the first time I've actually seen that when a character uses an archetype, then shifts to another one, and then reverts back to its original one after a few duels. I believe he used them in a grand total of 2 or 3 duels, and I'm not sure. Well, all the other duels he was using his original archetype known as Goukis. So yeah, we'll talk about them in some other days. But now, Dinowrestlers are here and we're ready to talk about them. Yeah, let's start with their first monster, that being the level 1 Dinowrestler Marshall Ampello. This is a level 1 with 600 attack and 0 defense, and during damage calculation, if your other Dinowrestler monster battles an opponent's monster with an equal or higher attack, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard. Your battling monster cannot be destroyed by that battle. Also, any damage you take from that battle is halved. When your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can banish this card from your graveyard, add 1 Dinowrestler monster from your deck to your hand except Marshall Ampello, and you can only use this effect of Dinowrestler Ampello once per turn. This is a decent little level 1 hand trap effect, so yeah. I'm actually very bothered by the fact that yeah, it does offer searching upon graveyard vanishing, but your opponent has to specifically declare an attack in order to perform this search, and you can't even search out another copy of himself in order to protect yourself if you happen to be in the same situation you were the first time you used it. So yeah, still it's a graveyard searcher, and yeah, it's undeniably good. For what it does, it searches out your entire monster lineup except itself, of course. But I would have also loved it if the stupid battling gimmick has to exist, that it also works when you declare an attack, not only your opponent. So yeah, it's perfectly serviceable, but it's still a 2 or 3 off staple. Next up we have their first level 2, Dinowrestler Coel Silat. This is a level 2 tuner monster, and if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. If summoned this way, this card cannot be used as link material except for the link summon of a Dinowrestler monster. You can only special summon Dinowrestler Coel Silat once per turn this way. This is the hardest 3-off staple thus far, and yeah, it's a free monster up in your first turn play, and yeah, it's their only tuner monster, which will be brought up later because they have a certain synchro monster that they can summon with it. So yeah, if you run the synchro monster, you basically are required to run this thing, because I think the synchro monster specifically requires a Dinowrestler tuner. So yeah, oh no, it actually requires a dinosaur tuner. So yeah, and those are actually not that far in between in this decks, unless you're running some Jurac tuners. So yeah, anyway, this is a great first turn option, and it should always be ran at 3. Next up we have their other level 2, Dinowrestler Marshall Ankylo, that's right. And it has 1000 attack and 0 defense, and during damage calculation, if another Dinowrestler monster you control battles an opponent's monster, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard. That monster you control cannot be destroyed by that battle, and also the attack of your opponent's battling monster is halved at the end of the damage step. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use this effect once per turn. Again, some decent graveyard recovery upon not doing a surge like Ampello does. I am actually kind of bothered by this thing's effect, that the operative word and the halving attack effect is after the damage step. I would have actually loved it miles more if it halved before the damage step, meaning you can probably get rid of that problematic monster that declared an attack, other than having to wait until your monster gets destroyed and you probably you get defeated that turn. For the attack, halving to take place. And yeah, it's as for the graveyard surge, yeah, not surge but recovery. Yeah, it vanishes itself during the end phase, but that is completely understandable because an infinitely recyclable low-level monster is just that is just very broken. So yeah, they had to level it up, level it out somewhat here. And yeah, also the halving effect is completely permanent, so yeah, it can serve a decent purpose if you survive next turn. Next up we have their first level 3, Dinowrestler Velonix. If your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. While you control a Link 3 or higher Dinowrestler monster, face up monsters you control are unaffected by the activated effects of your opponent's Link 3 or lower monsters. Bit of a specific protection, but it can certainly be very useful since Link 3 monsters are very commonly ran, especially the lower Link ones, in order to like further your boards and all that. So protecting yourself from an occasional Link monster effect is very nice. However, this is a very poor level 3, which is most likely going to be used as a Link material. So yeah, the protection effect might as not well be there. Although this thing is basically ran due to it being a free monster. You usually open up with Quill Salad, since you're probably going second, your opponent already has somewhat of a decent board, and you special summon this after this. And I think actually this is this special summoning condition is not actually a once per turn effect. So if you open up with 3 of them, you can instantly make a Link 4, provided you summoned Quill Salad beforehand. So yeah, this is a 3-off staple definitely. Since it's a level 3 as well, it can open up some rank 3 potential. So yeah, we have an overall amazing usefulness with this one. And their final level 3 is Dinowrestler Capaptera. Same stats as Velonix, and if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can target one monster your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Dinowrestler Capaptera once per turn. If this card is sent to the graveyard as a Link material for the Link summon of a Dinowrestler monster, you can activate this effect. The Link monster that used this card as material gains 1000 attack until the end of this turn. The fact that this thing for a level 3 has such a fantastic removal effect is absolutely outstanding. Sure, your opponent has to control more monsters than you do, but all around it's actually a very cool monster to have, since the removal effect does not destroy, instead it just sends to the graveyard, which actually avoids some floating effect which might trigger during the destruction of said monster. So it's a very cool card, and not to mention that you're most likely gonna use this thing as a Link material. So one of their Link monsters gains a 1000 attack boost, thus turning their biggest boss monster into 4000 attack Beatstick, which is always appreciated. And not to mention more if you actually use all 3 of them. So yeah, if you use all 3 of them on their boss monster, the boss monster becomes a 6000 attack Beatstick, which is nothing to laugh about. So yeah, 2 or 3 is usually fine with this one. Their first level 4 is Dinowrestler Capyruptor. This attack position card cannot be destroyed by battle. If this card is attacked, change it to defense position at the end of the damage step. During the standby phase, if this card is in defense position, you can special summon one Dinowrestler Capyruptor from your deck. You can only use this effect of Dinowrestler Capyruptor once per turn. Again, you can circumvent these things changing to defense position by utilizing something like final attack orders, but you generally don't want to do that because you can actually special summon another copy of itself, as fragile as that strategy may seem to be, because this thing has 0 defense, and not fond of that. I mean, you usually do whatever you can to protect it if you brick a bit harder, and then this is your first turn option. And yeah, and you then special summon another copy of itself, maybe follow up with another normal summon, then go into a Link 3. Yeah, it's a bit of a flimsy choice. So if you're running it for its effect, 2 is usually fine, since you're probably not going to be special summoning both of them as long as this card remains on the field. So yeah. Next up we have their final level 4, Dinowrestler Stegosaur. This one is a level 4 with 1900 attack and 0 defense, and if this card is special summoned, you can add one Dinowrestler monster or one World Dino Wrestling from your deck to your hand. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn and your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can target one Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard except Stegosaur, special summon it. You can only use this effect of Dinowrestler Stegosaur once per turn. This is again another fantastic piece of support due to it being level 4 with 1900 attack, which is a very welcome stat line for a level 4. Also, it can swarm the field if your opponent controls more monsters than you do. And yeah, this is kind of now becoming the primary gimmick of Dinowrestlers. They're basically a second turn play archetype which revolves around your opponent controlling more monsters than you do, which is most likely always going to be true. So yeah, that's a very nice gameplay gimmick you decided to implement there. And yeah, I would have actually loved if the special summon from the graveyard is an immediate effect after this card is sent to the graveyard, not just during the end phase, which can actually result in some decent play extension, but sadly it isn't. But still, it's a very nice effect, and yeah, the thing is usually ran at 2 or 3. Their first tribute monster is Dinowrestler Marshallanga. This is a level 5 with 1600 attack and 0 defense. And during damage calculation, your Dinowrestler monster battles a monster with an equal or higher attack. Quick effect. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. Your battling monster cannot be destroyed by that battle. Also, end the battle phase after the damage step. Once per turn during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there to activate its effect this turn, and your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card. Very interesting array of effects here. Again, why doesn't it end the battle phase before the damage step, not after it? It makes this card a lot less useless than a lot less useful. Sorry, than you might originally think, since you're most likely using this thing in order to protect an important monster of yours. So, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't get destroyed by battle, but you still take the damage, as the Arc 5 cast would say. But yeah, and not to mention that the graveyard reviving effect is very, very specific, and yeah, it's again, most of these plays are usually done in the first turn, so yeah, this one is usually run at 1 most, or maybe 2 if you feel like it, due to it being a tribute monster with a very terrible stat line, so yeah. Next up we have Dinowrestler Ambrachio, which is their final level 5. Again, same stats as the previous one, and when your Dinowrestler monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position. You can only use this effect once per turn, and your opponent cannot target other Dinowrestler monsters you control with card effects. Fun little piece of protection here, but you're most likely gonna be using this in order to further your link plays and extra deck plays in main phase 2 after you've dished out some damage, since this thing can be special summoned in defense position, not attacks. So it basically locks you out from dishing out some more damage if your opponent is open up for a direct attack. So yeah. Again, it's a tribute monster, so it usually is ran at 1 or 2. Next up we have Dinowrestler Escrimamenci. This is their first level 6 monster, and it has this effect. It has 2200 attack, which is a bit better for a tribute monster. And if you control a Dinowrestler monster, you can normal summon this card without tributing. During your turn, if your opponent special summons a monster while this card is in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can target one level 4 or lower Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and then add this card to your hand. You can only use this effect of Dinowrestler Escrimamenci once per turn. The alternate summoning condition is not too amazing, since you're just normal summoning it but with no tribute, which is fine, but I would very much approve if you could actually special summon it in defense position, kinda like Rambrachio. But what really kicks this card into overdrive is is the floating effect. If your opponent special summons a monster, you get to add a level 4 Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard. You get to add this thing to your hand and special summon a level 4 or lower Dinowrestler, meaning you basically recycle this thing in terms of usage. So yeah, not to mention that you're most likely going to be using said monster again as a link play option. So yeah, again, it's a tribute monster and not that bad stats, but again, it's usually ranked 1 or 2 as well. And their next level 6 and their final level 6 is Dinowrestler Iguanodraka. And this one has 2000 attack and 0 defense, and you can discard one other Dinowrestler dinosaur monster special summon discard from your hand. You contribute one dinosaur monster to target one Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard with a different original name. Special summon it in defense position. You can only use each effect of Dinowrestler Iguanodraka once per turn. This is actually a very fantastic piece of support. It allows you to discard any dinosaur monster to the graveyard in order to special summon it, which allows for some graveyard setup in some various dinosaur cards which actually have that graveyard setup available. You can also tribute any dinosaur monster to target a Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard with a different name, with different original name in order to special summon it, which only applies if you're tributing a Dinowrestler monster. And if you're not tributing a Dinowrestler monster, then this different original name part does not apply, since only Dinowrestlers are Dinowrestlers. So yeah, unlike any other tribute monsters, this is actually a 3-off staple in the deck because it's just that amazing. Much like the next monster, that being Dinowrestler Pancratops, their final main deck monster. It's a level 7 with 2600 attack and 0 defense. And if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon him once per turn this way, and it has a quick effect that you contribute one Dinowrestler monster, then target one card your opponent controls, destroy it. You can only use this effect of Dinowrestler Pancratops once per turn. This is a 3-off staple in not just Dinowrestlers, but any Link spam focus deck ever. The special summoning conditions is not once per turn. You special summon him for free. You can open up with multiples, which is basically a very high damage output right there. Not to mention this thing is a level 7. It opens up some rank 7 potential. And if you open up with multiples, if you don't care about rank 7 spam, you can tribute another Dinowrestler to target another card on the opponent's field and destroy it. And not to mention that this effect is actually a quick effect. Can the goodness of this effect ever stop? Yeah, this is basically masterpiece card design here. And as in terms of main deck boss monsters, this is actually a very splashable one and a very great archetypal one, and just that good. What can I say? Run 3 at all times and never any less. It's just that good. Alright, now going on to their extra deck. First up we have Dinowrestler Terra Pancurio. This is a Link 2, points up and left, has 1000 attack, requires 2 Dinowrestler monsters. And if you activate World Dino Wrestling, you can target one Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. If this card is sent to the graveyard as Link material, you can target one Dinowrestler monster in your graveyard, special summon it in defense position, but negate its effects. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn except Dinowrestler monsters. You can only use each effect once per turn. World Dino Wrestling is being brought up for the 2nd time already, and yeah, to no one's surprise, this is their field spell, but we'll get to that later. They only have 2 spell cards in total, as we'll see, and one of them we already mentioned twice. But in terms of this thing's effect, it's the very good play extender, and due to its arrows, you can actually perform some Dinowrestler extra links if you have the proper monsters. You're probably going to use either their boss monster as the top linker or Link Kuribo, then follow up with this. Then after this you probably summon something like Proxy Dragon. Then you follow up with Nightmare Cerberus. No, not Nightmare Phoenix. Those one has the all appropriate Link arrows. Then end with another probably Link Kuribo or their boss monster, which we'll get into soon. Not to mention it has a very decent graveyard recovery for you to basically extend your plays later, and yeah, it's overall a fantastic piece of support. And their final Link monster is their Link boss monster, that being Dinowrestler King T-Rexel. This is a Link 3 with 3000 attack, requires 2+ Dinowrestler monster, and if this card battles, your opponent cannot activate spell or trap cards until the end of the damage step. Your opponent's monster cannot target monsters for attacks except this one. At the start of the opponent's battle phase, you can target one attack position monster your opponent controls. This battle phase, your opponent cannot attack with other monsters until that one has. And if it does not declare an attack, destroy it at the end of the battle phase. So yeah, if you summon this thing using 3 Capopteras, this thing turns into a 6000 attack Beatstick, which automatically becomes the prime attack target due to its effect, and not to mention that you can force the opponent's weak monsters into attacking this thing for a potential 5000 plus damage. And not to mention also you can target somewhat of a stronger monster to attack, and if your opponent does not attack with it, it gets destroyed. Very interesting form of removal there, but one that works. And not to mention it has a very nice set of arrows, points bottom left, down, and bottom right, which is, for this kind of archetype, a very nice set of arrows. What can I say? And now we have their 2 other monsters. First up we have their Synchro monster, Dinowrestler Gigaspina Sawate. This is a level 8 with 3000 attack and 0 defense, requires a dinosaur tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monster. And if this card battles, your opponent cannot activate spell or traps until the end of the damage step. Your opponent's monsters cannot target monsters for attacks except this one. Once per turn you can target one monster your opponent controls, destroy it. If this card would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can destroy one card you control instead. Very formidable form of protection, and it also has the same attack manipulating effect, which if you manage to bring it out while King T-Wrestle is on the field, you can prevent your opponent from attacking altogether, and King T-Wrestle's attack manipulation effect becomes a simple removal effect. So yeah, you have to wait until the end phase to pull it off, but still the satisfaction is present nonetheless. Not to mention that it has a this thing has a once per turn pop a monster effect, which is always welcome in my book. Run one or two of these. And their final monster is their fusion monster, Dinowrestler Chimera T-Wrestle. This is a level 8 fusion with 3500 attack, and requires a Dinowrestler Link monster and a Dinowrestler monster as materials, so you're most likely gonna be using one of their Link monsters like Terra Parcourir or King T-Wrestle in order to summon it. So yeah, if this card battles, your opponent cannot activate spell or traps until the end of the damage step, blah blah. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage. Your opponent's monster cannot target other monsters for attacks except this one. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, it gains 500 attack, and if this card is destroyed by a card effect, destroy all of your opponent's attack position monsters. Okay, this one keeps the ignoring back row effect as well as the attack manipulation effect from the previous two Dinowrestlers. This one gains the ability to inflict piercing damage, and if it destroys a monster by battle, it gains 500 attack permanently, of course. And if this card is destroyed, it has a decent floating effect where you basically destroy all of your opponent's attack position monsters, which is always a very appreciative effect, not since your opponent most likely has plenty of Link monsters on the field, so you basically blow them all up and your opponent has no way to counter that abilities. So yeah, unless they have some Quasar level negations out on the field, or any effect that negates a monster effect. So yeah, this is one of their best boss monsters and should be around at 1 or 2. And their first spell on trap, and their on is actually the card you use to summon this the Chimera T-Wrestle, that being Tyrant Dino Fusion, which is a quick play. Fusion summon one Dinowrestler monster from your extra deck using monsters you control as fusion materials, and if you do, the first time that face-up monster on the field would be destroyed by a battle or card effect, this is not destroyed. This is by the numbers fusion spell, and it offers some simple protection to your monster, even though that said monster has a floating effect, which is a bit of an odd combination, but one that actually works pretty well. So yeah, you basically run this if you need to make a Chimera T-Wrestle, and being a quick play spell always helps out, since you can use it to dodge effects and everything. So yeah. And their final card is the aforementioned World Dino Wrestling, their field spell. While you control a Dinowrestler monster, each player can attack with only one monster during each battle phase. If your Dinowrestler monster attacks an opponent's monster, it gains 200 attack during the damage calculation only. Garrett Hole School again. Love it. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon one Dinowrestler monster from your deck, and you can only use this effect of World Dino Wrestling once per turn. It's a bit of a bummer that this thing has the Dark Door effect, which locks you both players into attacking with one monster, which is a bit sad, since Dino Wrestlers can have access to ridiculous damage output, so locking them out of it is kind of against their playstyle, honestly. But again, if it was only for the opponent, then I'd find it completely understandable. So yeah, it would actually work well in conjunction with King T-Wrestle's effect. So there's that. 200 attack is completely pointless due to how the archetype primarily works, and yeah, it has a very decent graveyard effect, as you can special summon a monster from the deck, which is always appreciated in my book. Alright, time for some grades, prehistoric grades, shall we? In terms of consistency, they have a lot of generic consistency options due to them being dinosaurs, such as Fossil Dig and Miscellaneosaurus. They can also synergize well with Jirax, which also have their own archetypal engines, so they actually stand out very well in this regard, and should always be given a 3 out of 3 when it comes to consistency. Power gets a fat 3 out of 3 due to how amazing King T-Wrestle can be, not to mention the Synchro and the Fusion monster. If you manage to summon all 3 of them at the same time, your opponent is in for a wild ride. And yeah, very good. Comeback ability is a bit flimsy. Dinosaurs in general don't have much of it present throughout the board, so yeah, it's a bit too specific, but still, Dino Wrestlers have their own archetypal comeback engines, so yeah, I'm gonna be generous here and give them a 2 out of 3. Protection is also pretty decent, since they have some very varied typal, let's say. Dinosaurs in general have some very neat protection effects available to them, so I'll be also a bit generous here and give them a 2 out of 3. And not to mention that some of the other archetypal Dino Wrestlers offer some very nice and sweet protection, so yeah, 2 out of 3 is completely understandable here. And as for the versatility, I'm gonna give them a 3 out of 3 due to just how splashable Pancratops is in other decks, and not to mention that these, due to them being dinosaurs, they have universal access to Evolzor, Lagia, and Dolka, which are just Solemn Warning and Solemn Strike on legs, which is always a nice addition to have, and not to mention that those are rank 4 Xyz monsters, which are, again, rank 4 and rank 7 are 2 best ranks in the game. And yeah, those were Dino Wrestlers, and yeah, this was also the final archetype analysis until 2 weeks, because next week, with Fairy Tail officially included since this morning, watched the final episode, it was brilliant. And yeah, I'll be doing the so-called Week of Fairy Tail, and it's going to be 7 top 10 lists, all on the topic of Fairy Tail, and it's gonna be a pretty fun ride. So I'm gonna list all of them now, which I'll be doing in the order that I list them in. So here goes. I'll be starting with top 10 Fairy Tail openings, then top 10 Fairy Tail waifus, top 10 Fairy Tail characters, top 10 Fairy Tail couples. Then after that, those are all the top 10 lists that I've actually written already and are ready to be recorded. And then I have 3 more which I did not write anything about, because for them I needed the show to conclude, because it was crucial to get those final bits and pieces of information in order to construct those top 10 lists. And those are top 10 fairy tale disappointments, top 10 funniest fairy tale moments, and top 10 most memorable fairy tale moments. It's only logical that at the end with that list. No top 10 endings, because fairy tales endings are kind of have the Sword Art Online syndrome, where they are very forgettable most of the time, and not to mention that almost half of the endings are done with the same formula, so yeah, it gets boring after a bit. There's only one fairy tale ending which is truly phenomenal, and that's Fairy Tale's Ending 11. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks back on Archetype Analysis. I will be taking a look at the Altergeist archetype. See you then, and thank you all so much for watching. See you all, and have a good day. Peace.